Good morning, Baldy. How are you this upcoming championship weekend?
Well, I'm doing great, guys. It's good to be with you. I feel like we've been on this ride together on a weekly basis. It's been a lot of fun. And, it all comes down to Sunday afternoon in Philadelphia right now, a place where I thought you guys played really well. Week 11, lost that game 26-18. But I remember watching that game and studying it. I remember it being a 12-10 game. Mm-hmm. And there was a fourth down opportunity for you to convert, and the play kind of got blown up, and you failed on converting that fourth down, and the Eagles kind of took the game over from there. But I mean, it was a very, very close game into the fourth quarter, and then obviously, week 16, Washington, that was a lot of fun, despite the turnovers. I mean, to throw that touchdown pass from Jaden to Jamison Crowder to win the game with 10 seconds to go. I mean, these two teams are, in some ways, are very evenly matched.
Yeah, I mean, that first game, Saquon took over in the fourth quarter, and you mentioned the second game went Washington's way. We were just having a discussion, and we don't know really anything about this, but you played guard, center, tackle in the league. Sam Cosmi's out, right?
Yep.
And Dan Quinn yesterday said they may just go with the best 5 linemen and not necessarily replace a guard with a guard. How hard is that to do?
Well, it could be hard. I mean, part of the problem is whoever's playing right guard, whether it's Trent Scott or whatever Dan decides to do. Because Trent wasn't bad last week. He's just a limited athlete, and they're going up against the Eagles' best player in Jalen Carter, best defensive player in Jalen Carter, who dominated the game in a couple of key spots last Sunday to help them win the game. And actually, if you go back to that week 1 play, or week 11 play where they missed it on 4th and 2, it was Jalen Carter blew the play up. And it really bubbled Jaden Daniels, and the linebackers caught to him on the sideline. But that's the part. The problem is that guy is largely going against Jalen Carter, who plays every play. Like, he might come out 1 or 2 plays in the game, but he generally plays every play. And if you are not, if you're not good against that guy, he destroys these plays. And now Jaden can get out of harm's way, quite a bit. He did last week. When they broke down one time up front. But that's part of the issue is you're going against Jalen Carter, and he gives everybody a handful.
So, Baldy, you tweeted one of your Baldy's breakdowns yesterday about Saquon, and obviously he's a pivotal player in this matchup, and he had a lot of success against the Commanders in the 2 games this season. But you broke down specifically that he had 12 carries that went for 224 yards, and he had 43 other runs that went for 87 yards, and that Sirianni's not going to do what Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson did and go away from Jahmyr Gibbs, which I still don't understand in that matchup.
Exactly.
They're going to keep giving Barkley the ball throughout, and one of these times he's going to hit a long one, if not 2 or 3 long ones. So I would expect another, 25-ish touch game for Barkley, if not more, when all the chips are in the middle this upcoming Sunday.
I remember, you're totally right. I mean, I think they're just going to keep feeding them. But I remember back when I played, when I was in Dallas, and we would play the Bears in that 85 Bears defense. I mean, we played them in 84. They were just as good in 84. And I remember Tom Landry, our coach, was saying, like, look, there's going to be a lot of plays. You're not going to gain 6 inches against this defense. But we're going to split one. We're going to hit one. And we did. And we beat them in 84. And we did it just the way Coach Landry explained it. Like, it's going to be a lot of tough sledding. And I think, Washington can sell out to stop Saquon. They can defeat some of the blocking schemes that they have up front. They don't run a lot of different run plays. They only run about 4 or 5 different plays. But there's some misdirection there. There's some things that you can take advantage of depending on who's in the box and where the safeties are and all that. And you got to stay with it. And I think, that's been what they did against the Rams last week. They stayed with it. I mean, they got the 2 big runs in the first quarter. Then they didn't get much for the next 2 quarters. Then in the fourth quarter, Saquon went 78 yards and basically put the game on ice. And so that's kind of how it goes. And I think Eagle players and Nick Sirianni specifically and Saquon know that there's a big run waiting. You have to get to it. You can't go away from it.
Baldy, the Eagles, the Commanders' offensive line's banged up a little bit, and the Eagles' offensive line is arguably, you would know better, arguably the best in the league. I mean, Malata, Dickerson, Juergens, Becton, and Johnson. They're starting five.
But you know what? By the way, that's how you know how good they are. You know those guys left tackle to right tackle in order in all their names.
Right.
Like you only know that if they're great.
Well, I'm reading it to be fair, but I do know these names. But Becton and Johnson, I know those guys because I've kind of paid attention to how they were blocking the Rams. And Becton's a monster. I mean, he's just he looks like he's 7 foot. And then Lane Johnson's a monster. So how can Washington defensively, when Philly is forced to pass, how can Washington kind of take advantage? Are they going to have to send guys? How can you get to Hurts when they're forced to pass?
Yeah, you got to send guys.
Yeah.
You can't rush 4. They last. Their favorite blitz is a crossfire with with Bobby and with Luvu, and you got to hold up on the back end. But Luvu is he's a really good rusher. He comes off the edge. He comes through different gaps. He doesn't show his blitz till late where he's coming, but he's an electric player. They got to get to a 5-man rush, and you got to make. We got to see what Jalen's health is like. Obviously, wasn't very good at the end of the game. He took a lot of sacks, but he does like to hold the ball.
Yeah.
And so he holds it probably longer than anybody in this whole league right now. But he's not going to put the ball in harm's way. If you take out that second Washington game, 2016, we got hurt, with the hit by Louisville. He's 12-0. He's 12-0 as the starter right now, and he's thrown 16 touchdown passes and 1 interception, 1 against Dallas. But he's not going to put the ball in harm's way the way Jared Goff did last week on a couple of occasions. And so he does hold it, and if he holds it, We'll see what his mobility's like, but you have a pretty good chance of getting there right now.
Insider calls are brought to you by Hellman's Real Mayonnaise. You can purchase Hellman's at your local Walmart, Kroger, or grocery store to add extra deliciousness and creamy flavor to your game day dishes this football season. This is kind of a bigger picture question, Baldy, but with Dan Quinn and Dan Campbell going for it on 4th down and succeeding at such a high clip, how much pressure does that put on other coaches to start adopting that approach, even if they're more conservative in the 2025 season and beyond? Like that puts pressure on other coaches to start adapting to what other coaches are doing.
Well, it's a great question, and I think you're right. Although, if it backfires like it did against Nick Sirianni early in the season, they want to run you right out of town. And so like they did, to Dan Campbell in last year's championship game against San Francisco, where if they kick field goals, they end up probably winning that game and going to the Super Bowl. When it works, it puts a lot of pressure on other teams and other coaches. Now, I tell everybody in this game, I mean, you're not defending 3 downs. You have to defend all 4 downs. Because if it's 4th and 2, if it's 4th and 1, these teams are going for it. Both teams are going. They want to possess the ball. They want to play keep away. They want to sustain drives. And sometimes it can be on your side of the 50. They're going for it. I've seen Nick Sirianni do it, when he's at his 30, I've seen him go for it. So it does put pressure on other teams and other coaches, but it puts pressure in the game that you're playing right now to knowing that, heck, it might only be an 8-possession game if these possessions are long and you're converting 4th downs. I think it's where we're at in this league right now, and the Eagles are a big analytics team. They've got a whole crew of analytics experts. Some of these times, I remember talking to Doug Peterson 8 years ago when they won a Super Bowl, and they went for it on 4th and 2 right before the half, and they ran the Philly special. And he said some of these games, he was making that decision on Wednesday. It was a group decision based on analytics, not based on how the game was going. Or they took the emotion out of it, and they made the decisions on Wednesday and Thursday looking at the analytics. So it's that's the direction it's going in this league right now, though.
Baldy, do you expect Marshon Lattimore to have a bigger role, bigger game than he did the last game where A.J. Brown was getting behind him and he had 3 penalties? I think Lattimore had two pass interferences and a holding. And then Sanders still would be on Devontae Smith because of the speed. We expect him to have a better game.
expect it because I forget how many weeks he'd been back in that Week 16 game. I think he had just come back.
He just came back. He played in the Saint game, and that was it. Yeah.
That was it, right? So he was just coming back from that hamstring.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how healthy he was, although I didn't think he was great against Tampa.
No.
But I know Marshon. Like, I think he'll only get better. A.J. Brown, it looks like he's banged up. He doesn't look like the same player right now. I think he's even admitted that his knee's giving him problems. He's probably going to need some kind of surgery after the season. But I would expect him to play better. Now, I thought once he got his second defensive pass interference penalty, I was like, you got to either change things up a little bit here. Like, you can't keep giving him these first downs. But he does love to challenge receivers, and he wants that assignment. So that's, I'm sure that Dan and Joe Witt and all those guys are probably, debating how they're going to play it right now. But, it's clear that San Francisco right now, obviously he's coming off a great game, and the interception before the end of the half was a big play. But those are two tough assignments regardless if you go man. But if they're going to blitz to get pressure on Jalen, you're probably going to have to play some level of man behind it. And so you got two elite players that can beat you. Now, AJ dropped one last week at the goal line that he doesn't normally drop.
Right.
You can look at the weather. You can look at a lot of factors. But you put the ball up there. It's a 50-50 ball, or you put it on his back shoulder. AJ, no matter who he's going against, he usually comes down with it.
Talking to Brian Baldinger, Odyssey's NFL insider. So before we get to the other game, because I do want to get to the other game, I don't know that we ever really ask you to pick a game. What's your lean? It almost sounds like you're pretty high on Washington.
Well, I think it's still early. It's only Thursday here. Like I still am going to go back and kind of study some things here. I don't want to say anything yet to you guys, but I just feel like, Washington is really hot right now. To go into Detroit and do what they did is amazing. Now, you can't like factor in 5 takeaways like they did in the defensive touchdown against the Eagles. They're not turning the ball over right now. But all things being considered, I think this game is going to go down to the fourth quarter. I think it's going to be close. I don't think either team is going to be able to pull away. Defensively, the Eagles are much, much better than Detroit. They're going to get Quinion Mitchell back at right corner. He's an excellent player. But they, but the Rams, they had him on the ropes there all the way to the end, and Jalen Carter kind of bailed him out on a couple of, a sack and a quarterback hit there at the end. But, they were right there at the end, and they had a chance, a great chance, despite, a touchdown runs of 76, 62, and 44 yards against them last week.
All right, so moving over to the AFC Championship, your thoughts on this? Of course, a lot of pressure on Josh Allen because he's had great regular seasons, hasn't been able to get it done in the postseason, and Mahomes, all he does is win.
By the way, not his fault.
I'm not saying it's his fault.
He's put them in position to win games.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's his fault. I'm just saying, there's just a lot of pressure on him to finally get there. Your thoughts on this matchup?
Well, I mean, look, Buffalo with Josh Allen is 7-5 in the playoffs. It's not like they just lose.
Yeah.
They win a lot of games. They're 0-3 against Kansas City, though.
Right.
So, that's the problem right now is getting past Kansas City. And, everybody knows that's why they schedule these games with Buffalo and Kansas City in regular season. It's Brady and Manning. And, Manning had a hard time getting past Brady until he got past him. And so they just have to beat him. Now, they've had opportunities. The games are generally close. I mean, they changed the overtime rule because of, one of these games 3 years ago when Mahomes scored in overtime and Josh Allen never got a chance to get the ball. So they changed the overtime rules because of these two players, these two teams. They have to get over it. Now, it's hard to go against Mahomes, Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo. I mean, that trio, they've won three Super Bowls now. And so it's a tough assignment, but the way Josh is playing, he hasn't thrown an interception in 4 games. He's only thrown 8. He's only turned it over 8 times all year. So he's doing a great job of protecting the ball, yet still making explosive plays. And they're a team that goes for it on 4th down. And they did a good job in that Week 11 matchup where Buffalo won 30-21. They did a great job of spying Mahomes in that game. And I think they'll have something similar for that. And now we'll see what the Kansas City's, answer to that is. Because when Mahomes in that game, it's kind of hard to believe, but he actually didn't run one time in that game. He was forced to throw it, or he took a sack based on those spies. So I think it's pretty interesting to see the chess match that's going to go on between those two teams.
Hey, Baldy, I don't know why I never asked you this, and maybe it's the first time I ever noticed it, but on your Wikipedia page, it says your graduating class had a couple of famous people. I would think that Brian Baldinger, NFL player, would be the most famous.
Pretty famous, yeah.
Dude, Salami from the White Shadow was one of his classmates.
Oh, yeah.
Tim Van Patten.
Oh, wow.
Timmy Van Patten, yeah. I mean, Jerry Seinfeld, was a Massapequa High School graduate. Alec Baldwin's dad taught in our school, Jessica Hahn. There's a lot of
Jessica Hahn's a funny name to throw in there. Which makes me laugh.
Steve Gutenberg is a Massapequa High School guy.
Wow.
I mean, you can just go on and on and on.
Unbelievable. Look at that. Look at that list of alumni coming out of that spot. Very, very nice. Well, Baldy, we appreciate the time. Have a good time on championship weekend. We'll talk to you next week, my friend.
Yep. Enjoy. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep, it will. That was Odyssey NFL Insider Brian Baldinger, host of the Best Football Show podcast.